Hey there, and thanks for joining us for this episode. And as we get started, I wanted to remind you to make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you may be listening to podcast. This podcast is sponsored by ServeHQ.church. ServeHQ is a place where you can train your volunteers and leaders online through effective video courses. And really, that's just the beginning. You've probably dealt with that frustration of trying to coordinate meeting times for training, trying to organize materials for helping people learn how to, whatever it may be, do some type of volunteer work or procedure at your church. And it quite honestly can just be really frustrating. Well, ServeHQ simplifies all of that by, again, putting it all online, allowing people to watch it and learn how to do ministry at your church at their pace. You can learn more and start using ServeHQ at www.servehq.church. That's www.servehq.church. Thanks to ServeHQ for sponsoring this episode. Well, now I look forward to presenting the main content of today's episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope right here on the Church Advance podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the final episode of the Church Advance podcast. Never thought I'd say that.
Man.
First episode, Luke, goes back, I believe, to 2020.
That sounds right.
And I think we were really, really consistent for the most part. Well over 200 episodes.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads. Thousands and thousands and thousands of haters.
Yeah.
And thousands and thousands of awesome feedback and great conversations. And it all comes down to this, the final episode. And I want to just, first of all, I want to say, before we kind of reminisce a little bit, I want to say thank you to all of my guests that made this fun over the years. I'm thinking some really great ones, some really memorable ones. Josh Tice, Eric Capacey, one of my favorite guests. Mark Ward was a tremendous guest. Kurt Skelly. Kenny Baldwin was on here for some preaching talks. I remember Brother Fred from Pennsylvania. Tremendous episodes on transition his church as an older man. Man, so many fun conversations. So thank you guys, first of all those classic interviews that we did. And then, of course, thank you to all of our listeners over the years, hundreds of you every week. And I know many of you have chimed in even consistently all the way to the end. And so we're really appreciative, man. What a fun thing to do. But also, I think a helpful thing to do. And Luke, for more than half of that time, you were here. So thank you to you too, man, for making this all happen from a technical perspective, production perspective. You pulled the train, and thank you for your part in making my voice heard on these airwaves. So Luke, welcome to the final episode, man. Here we are.
Here it is, the finale. You know, we had that. You're using the technical terms. We had the penultimate episode, the second to last. This is the grand series finale.
I remember
Church Advance.
Watching, if you watch like series of shows that you got into, and some of them, have great endings, and some of them are like, what just happened? And some of them, man, you're like, you never want them to end. And
we don't know how you feel out there, audience. We don't know. Maybe you're like, about time. But either way, this is it.
We don't want anybody to think we're not available, we're not accessible, man. You can go to pulpitadvance.com. You can go to increasecreative.co, and check us out. Of course, we're still on social. All of our relevant email addresses and contacts, which will be on this final episode show notes, are there. We want you to know that we're available and we want to be a part of your lives and help in any way that we can. It's just this part of the conversation is over as we take a direction toward things, as we mentioned the last 2 weeks, that we are more passionate about. And guys, I think this is very natural for anyone as you grow older, as you focus your life. You just decide, man, I really want this to be more of my energies are spent. So no problems. We loved every bit of this conversation, but I think just for that, we're gonna shut it down. And from this point forward, any new material is going to be over at pulpitadvance.com from my perspective, and on the Pulpit Advance YouTube channel for episodes and small clips of episodes, and so on. So, man, what a time it has been. And I'm just thinking back, I just wanted to think back to, for me, how it all started. And how it all started really was basically right around the end of 2019, going into 2020. And me and the team here at River City Baptist Churches got together and said, we should start talking about this stuff around a microphone. And at first, it was just sitting around literally on audio. And I remember our first episode was in one of the church classrooms, and we just sat around with microphones. Kind of, I think we passed the microphone around. And Jason Alvarez was this in the early days, and Aaron Chan, of course, Eric McKay, who was our youth pastor at the time, and then one of our deacons, Mike Bennett, who was also a West Coast Baptist College student, had come into our church to get some respite. And we really got things kicked off with a 2-part episode called I Should Have Been Dead. I think it was actually episode 2 and episode 3. And I mean, Mike was very candid about his story and how that he was about to commit suicide, and how disenfranchised he was with ministry, and how disheartened he was in the way things were going in his life, and how God basically picked him back up. And now Mike is a successful pastor in Indiana, doing a great job, and certainly proud of him. And then from there, I remember Eric McKay did an episode in the early days on why it's sometimes necessary to leave full-time ministry for a season. That episode was really, really strong and got lots of feedback and helped a lot of people. And then, of course, we jumped into the deep end within the first 10 episodes. And that's when the conversation about the transition began. And with Mark Ward. And Mark, tremendous help to me in that area, helped change my perspective, change my destiny on the subject. And from there, it kind of got wild and crazy for a couple of years.
Well, hey, speaking of the OGs of the podcast, we have a special guest joining us right now. There he is. The OG co-host, Aaron Chan, is here. And Aaron, I was gonna say, you're jumping in. Like, I'm glad you got a shirt on and that everything's looking appropriate over there.
Yeah,
we're recording right now.
Like my dirty laundry and all my other stuff here in the back. It's great.
That's real ministry, great. Brother.
Hey, just don't tell Annie that you did that, and it would be great.
I could probably do a background here, couldn't I?
No,
you're good. You're good. We don't hear. Nobody watches anyway. Everybody just listens.
So Chan, first of all, why I got you on here, man. I just want to say, a lot of guys that follow the podcast go all the way back. You were my original co-host for at least 2 years. We did it began the Brian Sands podcast, and then turned into the Church Fans podcast that will end today officially. And Chan, I mean, my goodness, man, we go back to all these episodes until you stopped producing with me, because you frankly went to go replant a church that started with 6 people. Tell us about last Sunday before we even get into this. Tell us about your Sunday last week.
So we had 90 people at church on Sunday, which was really cool. Our highest attendance ever, of course. From those original 6 or 7 people that we started with, we still have like 4 of them. So, over 50% retention rate. There you go, right? But we had 90 people. 2 people raised their hand for salvation, which was awesome. We have 96 chairs in the auditorium, and so it was crowded. We had, I think, 70 people in the auditorium, like 19 people in children's, which in itself is really cool too, because when we got there was no kids, and now we've got young Navy families, just sailors, just everybody just kind of pouring in, which has been really awesome. We've seen, I think, 10 people saved this year and 14 people baptized so far. And I've been praying for 12 this year, 12 baptisms. So God just doing a whole lot of good, cool stuff. We're really excited.
That's amazing, man. And I tell you, man, your retention rate is better than mine. So, but good job, man. I'm just so proud of the work you're doing over there. And since this is the last episode, man, I just wanted you to come in since you were your original. I was just right before you popped on there. I was talking about our first couple episodes. You remember back in the classroom in the South Wing here at the church?
Yeah,
like passing around a microphone.
Yeah, try not to hit the folding card table we have too hard, right? But the microphones are sitting on.
Folding card table.
Yeah.
And now we're all fancy with all this high tech, Riverside, whatever, all this kind of stuff. And but Aaron, just give me give us some fun memories, perspectives, what you think was even important about the Church Advance podcast.
I think the most important thing is, and I've joked around with you about this, I think that you started the podcast at a critical time in your ministry. And as you were shaping and reforming your ministry philosophy, you were able to broadcast your thoughts through this podcast. And I think that ended up making a lot of guys that we've been able to see, either come on the podcast or come to Liberty City Baptist Church. It made a lot of guys realize, there's something more to than the background that I've gotten used to, which, frankly, is the independent fundamental Baptist background. And as they saw one of their previous professors or mentors or leaders, preaching teachers, Brian Sams, I think that you were able to do some tremendous good with influencing a lot of these guys into thinking, maybe there's a broader world out there that's maybe a little bit more that matches what I feel like is in my heart. I think without the Brian Sams podcast, without the Church Advance podcast, you probably still have guys that were left would be left out there wondering, who am I? Because I'm not over here with all of the old, the old timey fundamental, but I'm not over here either with I'm not, there's another crowd out there that I'm not comfortable with, whether it just be the style of worship is just a little bit too out there for me, or ministry philosophy, or they're maybe a little bit too friendly with certain groups that I'm not sure about. I think this podcast provided a space where guys could feel comfortable saying, you know what, I think that's where I'm at. And I think you brought that out, especially among guys that are me and Luke's age, our class, our year. I think that's probably the greatest contribution that the podcast has made. That, without a doubt, the funnest one was probably the King James podcast episode. Man, those were fun.
Oh man,
yeah,
it was so raw, and I think what was funny about it to me, and I appreciate your perspective on that, because now, hindsight 2020, I realize that's exactly what was happening. I was basically talking out what I was going through, but now when you look back, you're like, that was so raw. I mean, that was taboo. Like, you don't mess with those things, and we messed with them.
Yeah,
And
I mean, to this day, there are still, if I were to say their names, you'd know who they are. There's still guys that are making angry posts about Brian Sams and some other guys that they went out from us because they were never among, whatever the Book of Jude says, right? Some ridiculous nonsense. And it's just like guys, it's been like 5 years. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like
that,
still living rent free, right?
Right.
yeah, and that's what I was telling Brian before we started recording. I was like, we could make a whole episode just, reading mean comments, but we don't have enough time. We'd have to like start a whole, that could be just a whole new podcast. Is now we have a podcast about reading the mean comments and tweets
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the Church of Fans podcast. But Aaron, I want to echo what you said there about guys in our generation, our age, needing to find like a place where we felt understood and where we felt like we had camaraderie and friends. And that is what honestly brought me into being a part of the podcast ultimately. I came down, Brian, you invited me down to, it might have been the first Church of Man's conference.
It was.
And you said, hey, just come, we'll give you a table, you can promote your business. And I said, yeah, sure, free marketing, why not? I think I had some Southwest points I could use. It was going to be a pretty relatively cheap opportunity for me there. And so, but it was really awesome to get there. And that year we had Kurt Skelly was speaking, Carrie Schmidt, HB Charles. But Kurt and Carrie in particular, and Brian, you for me, it was like, here's three men who I kind of grew up knowing as like kind of like, like in my world, the independent Baptist world, they were kind of like icons in the youth world when I was a teenager. And here they are, and they I don't know, for lack of better terms, I was like, oh, they don't have sticks up their butts. They're just normal guys. And they are, open-minded as long as we're on the same mission of preaching the gospel and sticking to biblical theology. And it's basically, if as long as you're truly preaching Christ, we're for you. And for me, it was just like, oh, wow, that's just cool that this exists and that these guys that I highly respect are a part of that. And then for me, I mean, yeah, I remember coming to you, Brian, at that conference. I was like, whatever I can do to further this movement, I want to be a part. And then ultimately, that's where spinning the Brian Sams podcast and the Church of Fans podcast, and then a few more conferences after that. And so, yeah, Aaron, I mean, I totally like resonate with what you're saying there. Like, this was a space for guys, particularly in our generation, to kind of find our way. And again, that was such a rewarding part of being a part of this all these years.
Yeah, and I think the fun thing is like that group has been, they have found their voice. It may be different than where I'm at, which is completely fine. It may be far left, far right, it doesn't matter. But now I feel like one of the reasons, Aaron, that I was like, I think I'm done talking about this, is because now there's new guys speaking into certain issues, and for the most part, a lot of reasonable thinking people, those issues are behind us now. Like most, the guys, they have decided, yeah, I'm either in that, I'm out of that. But I just got to the point where I was like, man, I don't want to let this be the thing that I keep speaking about, because I feel like I've said what I wanted to say. And now it's time for me to put down that megaphone and pick up another megaphone and focus on something completely different. So that's why both Luke and I agreed to sign off here and just let this be, I'm still going to curate the content in playlists on the YouTube site, so it's not going to go away, but I'm just not going to, it's already out there. If you want to talk about translations, here's a whole playlist you can go look at. If you want to talk about church transitioning, here's a playlist. If you want to talk about preaching, here's a playlist. And so, yeah, man, so it was fun. I think all of us agree that obviously the most lightning rod thing we ever talked about was translations. That was the big thing, got the most hits. And it still is. I mean, I still get negative stuff, like you said. And it's sad. I mean, it got to the point where like I was scheduled to speak at conferences and I was getting canceled, and because it was causing so much chaos. and it's so sad. It's so sad, but hopefully there was enough schism. I say that in a good way, schism there, that it created the ability for people to be flexible and decide whose side and what they were really going to make. I was talking to somebody this morning about one of the weaknesses of some of these extreme movements is they never distilled. Sometimes the problem in our churches and our ministry philosophies, we never distill down to what really matters. And churches just they're too broad, they're too focused on too much. You got to distill to what's important, and then your ministry can thrive. Until you distill and get rid of all this, it doesn't mean that we're going to be on the same page about translations or whatever. It just means this: we've distilled down to where that's not our issue. We've distilled down to where the gospel and proclaiming Christ, preaching biblical sermons is the issue. And so, man, hey, praise the Lord for the wonderful run. It was 5 years, champ, 5 years, over 200 episodes of a great time. I want to say thank you to both of you guys. You helped carry a vision for me. I'm always be grateful for both of you for that, for hanging in there with me and laboring through conversations sometimes you weren't even a part of, producing things for me that was able to get on the air, because as you both know, I don't have the expertise to do any of those kinds of things. I'm always going, how do you do this? So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being co-laborers with me and for me on this journey. And I'll give you guys a last word and then I'll sign off. So Aaron, last words on Church Advance. What would you like to say as your closing comment?
It's been a blast, and I think that I've not. There's few things that are more fun than have been in the last 5 years in doing the podcast. It's been great. So thanks for having me on as a producer, recorder, co-host, gopher, whatever you want to call it.
Oh man, you helped me get started. I appreciate it. Luke, last word for you, man.
Yeah, well, I'm going to echo the thanks to the audience for listening to us all these years, and in particular these past 3 that I've been the co-host. Thank you for Aaron. Thank you to Aaron for going on and pursuing church planning, essentially allowing me the opportunity to step up. And with that in mind, I can't help but think, Aaron, you left the podcast so that you could focus on planning a church. You took a church of 6 people. You just had over 90 there on Sunday. And I can't help but wonder, okay, hey, now that me and Brian are stepping away from podcasts, what type of maybe greater impact can we have that ever would have exceeded, this particular podcast? Because like we said in a previous episode, Brian, we've accomplished our mission here at Church Advance. And now we're just really excited to see what God's got for all 3 of us individually as we move on to the next chapter.
And for the last time, we won't see you next time on the Church Advance podcast. This is it. God bless you guys. We'll see you on our other platforms soon.